on the last episode that we talked about restricted free agency, we were just sitting here and we were saying that 400 is the deal that makes the most sense. I think we've been saying that for months at this point. The 400 is the deal that makes the most sense for everybody. Let's just do 400, right?
Let's do it.
And wouldn't you know it, Josh Giddey has signed a contract for $100 million. 4 years, $100 million. It is a deal that makes sense, I think, for everybody across the board. And we'll talk about why as we go through it. There are no player, no team options. It's fully guaranteed. Josh Giddey is now a Chicago Bull for the next 4 years, at least under contract there. Bryce, what was your thought when we saw this?
First and foremost, we're one more away from I might just hang it up, Sam. So I don't know who is on deck for. I want to uphold the lineage of your co-host on this podcast, but if I go 3 for 3 in predictions with these restricted free agents and Jonathan Kuminga gets traded to the Kings, I may just have to call it quits. So no, I mean, this always made a ton of sense. I think we talked about, for Giddy, it's just like, can you get to 100 million? Can you say you got $100 million? That's where they ended up. I think Chicago, Giddy had a little bit of leverage. He traded Alex Caruso for him. So, any sort of situation where he potentially walks out of there for nothing, it just didn't seem feasible. So I think this is a decent number for him. Giddy had a really good season last year in Chicago. We've talked about it. The end of the season was incredible. This could look awesome if Giddy really proves to be good enough. Giddy's only going into age 23 season. If the jumper really grows, if the defense continues to improve, this could end up being a really good deal. But I don't think this ends up being a bad deal for Chicago. Like, worst thing for Chicago is you have Giddy on $25 million, and even if they ever went full rebuild, I still don't think he's a bad player to have on your roster with your young guys. He gets other people the ball. He passes it really well. He fills up the box score. So I think this is a fine deal for the Bulls. And, Josh Giddey gets $100 million.
So Josh Giddey over the entirety of last season, 14.6 points, 8 rebounds, 7.2 assists versus 2.9 turnovers, shot 46.5, 37.8, 78.1. But really, the thing that they're paying him for is not the full season numbers. They're paying him because of how he closed the season.
Yep.
If you look at his final 25 games last year, Josh Giddey averaged 20.2 points, 9.5 rebounds, 8.1 assists versus 3.1 turnovers, also 1.4 steals and 0.8 blocks, shooting 49, 45, 80. Obviously, the 45% from three is not going to hold. That's the reality. It just is what it is. But if you get that kind of production from Josh Giddey, you're going to laugh to the bank with this deal, right? Now, the question with Giddy is, and always has been, what does he look like on a winning team? We saw him with Oklahoma City. I think that situation was uniquely challenging to fit his skill set into because they had 2 all-NBA caliber ball handlers in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jalen Williams. And we can, I guess, say that J-Dub was not quite there yet in terms of all-NBA status in his second season, but we knew that's, or at least I did, and Oklahoma City knew that that's where it was going. So that resulted in Josh playing more off of the ball. What Josh now has to prove is that he can be an on-ball player who can help you consistently win games. I think that he is a better bet to do that than seemingly a lot of people do, maybe. I get the consternation about the shooting. I think that there is just going to be a delta between what he shoots year over year in all likelihood. He shot 38% over the full season last year because he had that crazy hot finish to the year. I would guess that the shooting percentage is probably going to come somewhere between 33 and 38% this year. And that's a big number. That's a big delta to have to work within if you're a team, right? But if he can iron that out a little bit even, it becomes just a lot easier to work with him on your team, especially if he can iron out the catch and shoot. Because if he can catch and shoot, things get very easy to work him into an offense because you don't have to play him as much on the ball at the end of the day. Right now, I think you do kind of have to play him on the ball because I don't think teams trust him or teams treat him maybe as a shooter. Teams will just leave him open. The other thing that Josh does pretty well, I think, is when teams leave him open, he will drive, he will carve out space, and will try to force help defense, right? But right now, I think that what a lot of teams do when you play him off of the ball is they will just put a center on him. And they will say, okay, we're going to absorb the contact. He doesn't really have an in-between game in terms of like a pull-up mid-range jumper that's effective. He really has to get into that like 8 to 10 foot range to even be able to get to the floater that he likes. So we can just put a big on him and kind of cut off angles from everybody else. And if he does get the ball and does drive into me, cool. That's it. Like we're all good. So there's some growth here that he has to undertake undeniably. That's why I think that this is probably the right number. Anything more than this, I think that the number in the risk factor would have fallen more on the Bulls side.
Yep.
Anything less than this, I would have said, I think that there's probably a little bit more upside for Giddy at the end of the day to like way overperform this contract. And there'd be like immense upside for the Bulls, right? I think 25 is just kind of the right number here that kind of puts the risk equally on both sides with this, right? Like, okay, maybe he ends up being like, the 20th best point guard in the league, 25th best point guard in the league. And he gets your guys organized and is a great transition player, a fantastic transition passer, but it's kind of harder to make him work in a winning situation. You can kind of get away with paying that guy 25 on your team as long as he's like helping younger guys develop, which is a huge factor here for Chicago, I think. But more than that, like he's a younger guy.
No, like
he is still 22 years old.
Yeah.
Like he is so young.
Yeah. No, like that was kind of my point was you're paying at that money. If the worst case is Josh Giddey helps Modest develop and Essengay develop and whoever else they bring in over the next couple of years because he has the ball in his hands and he orchestrates the offense and allows them to do what they do best. Like it's not ideal, but it's not like a waste. Like you didn't just completely, while having the upside of this guy could turn into a real starting caliber player for us if and when we ever get serious about building out a team that's a real contender. I'm glad you brought up like the off the ball stuff because I don't know that I believe even at his age, Josh Giddey is ever the guy that you say, hey, that's the guy with the ball in his hands. Like for us exclusive, like he's the number one engine driver of our offense throughout the playoffs. And if he's not that guy, the guy that you do bring in to eventually be that, whoever it is, a young guy on the roster, down the road, whatever, Giddy has to be able to play off of that player. And a lot of that comes down to the shooting, which you highlighted. The other thing I'll say in terms of, something that's brought about with Giddy and, in Oklahoma City was what about being a sixth man? Like how good could he be as a sixth man? This is elite six-man money, but because of that, like I think it makes it fine. Like I think if you bring in Josh Giddey off the bench, you're feeling pretty good. And I do wonder if he could. Do you think Giddey could be the sixth man for like a real playoff, like be the ball handler, the second unit ball handler for a really good like title contender type team?
Yes, second unit ball handler, yes, but I don't know if that makes him a particularly great like sixth man, if teams still don't feel like they have to guard him, because the best sixth men in the NBA are guys that can play with the team's best players, right? And that's, I think, what Josh still has to prove a little bit is that he can play with great players with him and not have everything kind of revolve around his own skill set, right?
So it's an overpay in that role, but it's not so. I don't think we're going to be looking at this in 2 years, even if Giddy's Giddy's numbers don't really grow or take a huge leap and be like, oh my gosh, like can't believe that they have him on the books for this number. I don't feel like we're going to be going there.
I don't think so either.
I suppose it's possible. And I think there could be like, hey, this is a neutral contract, maybe slightly negative. But like you said, there's also an outcome here where it's like, hey, Chicago has Josh Giddey on a great contract right now because he's figured out how to knock down the catch and shoot and cut and offensive rebound along with everything he does on the ball. And that's really exciting to go along with players A, B, and C, whether it's Modest or whoever else. Like, I mean, that's a whole different side we always talk about with the Bulls. I don't know what else Chicago's doing here, but I tend to not mind this specific move in terms of this contract.
I do just want to note one thing on Chicago while we're talking about this. They are very clearly investing substantially in just big athletic dudes, right? Like, I feel like more than anything, like that's what their front office seems to be valuing right now is just big, skilled human beings, or like skilled, so, we'll see what Essengay is, right? But like the idea of them drafting Modest Buzelis and Noah Essengay back to back, paying Josh Giddey after acquiring him for Alex Caruso. Obviously, they invested significant resources into Patrick Williams, who that's a bad idea, but whatever. They drafted Dalen Terry, who is a guy that I'm not sure is very good, but is 6'6", 7 foot wingspan, super long. Like, idea is that he's a 3-and-D. Isaac Okoro, the idea is he's like a 6'5" with a 6'10" wingspan, 3-and-D guy. Even like Kobe White is like a big, like fairly big lead initiator. It's somewhere between 6'4" and 6'5", right? They're just going to be a very big team. And that's like that's a really interesting strategy to me. Like, you're very clearly going to be trying to shrink the court in some way, shape, or form with all of these long athletic bodies. I don't hate it, I think is where I'm at. Like, I don't know if the players that they've drafted are good enough to like really move the needle on an NBA wide sense, right? Like, I think Modest is going to be like a good player for sure. Like, he's probably going to be a starter. I'm not as high on the upside with him just because I don't know about the ball handling. I don't think he plays with a lot of bend and a lot of flex. We'll see if that ends up being wrong. Essengay, again, just like very high hips, a player that I'm not, quite as high on as some of the internet seem to be, but whatever. I do like though that they at least have a vision that they seem to be going down now. Like, you can agree or disagree with the vision, but there is at least a vision here, which is something that we can't say Chicago has had, frankly, for quite a long time.
Yeah, it's interesting that they've put these players. I think Giddy fits that style. Obviously, get up and down, play fast, the length, the athleticism. To me, I just look at the roster and I'm like, over the next couple of years, to me, the biggest hole is the star, right? Who is your number one offensive engine, scorer, whatever you want to call it? Because, I mean, I love Kobe White, but I don't think he's that guy. So, and, they have some real contract decisions to make in terms of him. And then what are they going to do with Vooch? But I think the other spot is, can you go find the center that fills that as well? Like, can you put a big man in there? Because no matter, like, Vooch is entering age 35 season. He's not the future of this. So I'm interested to see how they can build out that roster, because if you gave me a number one scoring option on that team and you gave me a big man that I really believed in that fit that system, and then you have Josh Giddey and Modest and what people think Noah Essengay might be, even though I'm not super high on it, that's kind of interesting all of a sudden, and not a fun team to play against that's going to be long and athletic and play fast. So again, I don't know if I trust them to finish this thing out, but to your point, it seems like there is somewhat of a development of a vision and a path for this team moving forward. Now you have to execute it.
Yep. Okay. Overall, like, I think we're pretty positive on the Giddy deal, though. Like, I think it's a deal that makes sense. He needs to improve on defense. He does need to improve the shot. I know that the shot numbers look better last year. We'll see if that holds, right? Like, it might not. We'll see. But by and large, I am generally pretty good. I think that this is the right deal.
Yeah.
I think is what I would say.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah. But they still need, like, I agree with you. They still need the massive upside swing.
Yes.
And maybe that comes this year. Like, maybe they're just not great this year. And I think they would welcome that. Like, you know, you start at the end of the season, if there's, 30 and 50 or whatever, and they're starting Josh, Essengay, Modest, a shooter at the 2, and then, hopefully they've moved Vooch at the deadline, and they just have, maybe it's honestly like Jalen Smith at the 5 in order to get some spacing. And maybe you've moved Sumu at the deadline or something. And, obviously, like, Kobe White could still be there as well. Kobe White would be a totally sensible 2 to start next to Josh. Like, we'll see what they do with Kobe. Kobe's an unrestricted free agent this year. I think that is something that's kind of gone a little bit under the radar because of the way that, they structured his deal coming off of that big close to his 4th season. He has $12.8 million. So it's probably unextendable, if you made me guess. I would guess he'll want more than 20 a year. He averaged 20.4 points, shooting 45, 37, 90 last year, and was really good at the end of the year again, too, once they had moved certainly Levine. So I just don't totally know if they end up keeping him, or does he look to move? Like we think Kobe White is. Do we think Kobe White is better or worse than Cam Thomas?
So I was just thinking that, because I was like, while we say that Kobe White, whatever numbers you want to throw out, we've seen these guys get squeezed a little bit, and we've seen the league, be a little bit more nervous on giving them certain numbers. Is there a world where you could talk Kobe into, especially if you could get the years on it, where Kobe White locking in a number actually makes more sense? Because you do have Cam Thomas hitting the market next offseason. And, how many teams are in the market for that type of play? Now they're not the same, but the idea a little bit is the same, like an off ball, a scoring guard. I know they do it in different ways. I understand it, but I don't know. It'll be interesting. This is the archetype we talk about all the time that I'm fascinated to see. There's one in Detroit that, again, is a different type of player than these two guys that I'm fascinated to see what the market is and what the value is, because it seems like if you're not like a true bucket getter that's a number 1, number 2 option, then the NBA is starting to change their thoughts on you and how much money they want to give you.
Kobe White in his last 30 games last year, 24 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists versus 2.3 turnovers, shot 48, 39, 92.
Sounds good.
And got to the line 6 times a game. Kobe is
underrated.
I think Kobe is ahead of Cam Thomas right now in the pecking order. So if you're looking at, okay, who gets paid, who doesn't next summer, I think that if I was Cam Thomas's representation, I'd be like, or if I was Kobe White's, I'm sorry, I would be like, I feel pretty good about where
you have a pretty good argument, right? And if you're Cam Thomas, this is something we never brought up, but it's like, man, if Kobe White hits the market, are we in a little bit of trouble? How many of these type of players are going to get signed next off they'll get signed, but to the deals that they're wanting, right? To real deals. So,
well, it is interesting, if only just because you look at, who's going to be available next summer, right? There actually are weirdly some unrestricted free agent, smaller, guards kind of, right? Like
Austin Reeves.
Austin Reeves, Kobe White, Cam Thomas, like these guys are all right now, I think 25 and under. Is Reeves 26 maybe? Might be 26 now, but like then, I mean, God knows what happens with Trae Young, right? Like he still has a player option that he could exercise and hit the market if he wants to. And like you could really look up and see like quite a few, 20s free agents where like Anthony Simons is 27 in the summer. So Anthony Simons is probably ahead of Cam Thomas in the pecking order right now.
Reeves is 28, but like just to add to it as well, Norm Powell, this is much older, but like Norm Powell is going to be one.
Yeah.
Colin Sexton right now is due to hit the market as an unrestricted free agent. Yeah,
there are a lot of names there.
Yeah,
on that like guard market, which is really, really interesting.
That is interesting.
Yep. Yeah. So we'll see. I think if I was Kobe White, like I'd feel pretty good about where I'm at going into this season and feel like I could have like a really good walk season. That could force the Bulls' hand. Certainly, they can pay him more than anybody else, but could position me with another team to really set myself up for a big payday.
Sure.
So, the Kobe White factor is fascinating for them now moving forward. And I would imagine that he'll be like, he could be one of the premier trade targets at the deadline. And I know Bulls fans don't want to hear that. Like they just want to re-sign him, but if they feel like it's not going some way, like they might, it might really behoove them to take a look at the market.
Sure.
So we'll see.